Hey folks, welcome. My name is Andrew, this is What I Do, and today we're looking at what a UI UX developer does.
There is a whole world of jobs out there, most of which we've never heard of. Let's explore that world together.
To help us develop a better understanding of UI UX and any potentially useful abbreviations, we're going to turn to Nina. Nina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I suppose the first thing that most people would wonder is what on earth is UI and UX?
So UI stands for user interface, and then UX is user experience. I always use this like example of a car radio.
Yeah.
So the user interface is what you see. So it's all the like fancy knobs and the buttons that you can press, or some, cars now have touch screens.
So you often work with fancy knobs is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so the UI is the fancy knobs on the car radio, but then the UX, what is that?
Have you ever been in the situation where you've tried to connect a Bluetooth device while driving, and a certain car's like, sorry, you can't do that while you're driving. You have to literally pull off the road to connect it. So that would be something that pertains to the experience of the user, and that's bad.
Right.
For example, when you're trying to find something on the radio, like even just how to connect your phone to Bluetooth, having it in a place where it's easy to find, it makes sense. It's something that is easy to understand and get to. That's good user experience.
So I've often heard the term designer thrown in with UX and UI, but you call yourself a UI developer. Is there a distinction between those two roles?
Yes, there's quite a big distinction. So I think the easiest way to put it is the one only designs and the other one designs and develops. So I also write code and everything, which is cool because I can go from like talking to the clients, finding the requirements, interviewing some users to try and figure out what they want, how, like, do they understand what this means? And then from there on, making the designs. So the interview and all that would be the UX part.
Okay, yeah.
That's where you'd kind of like find out what do they really want.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
Because if you can give them the feature to take selfies on a new car's radio, why not? I mean, that's cool, but who's going to use it?
So that user experience has got to come from some sort of research with the client, some sort of understanding of what they really want and need.
Exactly, yes. And that's the big thing. So it's very important, and a lot of companies skip this part because they're like, oh yeah, we decided that our users want to take selfies while they're driving. Yeah. Very safe.
Yeah, because we want to have this unique selling point, but I mean, who cares?
They're like, I know you want to buy this car, but wait, this car has a radio that takes selfies.
Right.
And then that's the ad. And then people die, which is fun. So if they don't do that research, they're not going to find out what their users want, what their needs are. It's a very important step, and a lot of companies skip this because they're like, oh, no one's going to want to pay for this because what's the value? You're going to ask people some questions, but it's really important actually. It's like, I don't know if you know about CarTrack. So we have CarTrack installed in our cars, but you know what I use the CarTrack app for? Is not to like check where my car is it still parked safely in the garage where I left it. I use it to see what time I got to work because I forget. Okay. And then I'm like, oh, I can leave in 10 minutes, So it's weird, but it's things like that you won't know unless you ask your users.
So how you designed it and how it actually gets used might not be the same.
Definitely. And that you'll only see once you test it. Which is also part of the UX. So it would be like UX to interview and find out what the people think they want or what they need. And then you'd do the UI, which is the design part. So how it's going to look, how the person's going to get from point A to point B, where you click, what the animations are, all the fun stuff. And then from there on, you'd go to testing, which is back to UX. Because if you test it in the design phase still, before you've started programming, it's much cheaper because then you can go back and change everything. It's fine. But if you've like spent days developing this thing, and then you're like, oh wait, this doesn't work. So the testing is back to the UX, and then from there on you iterate over, redesign, retest. But this isn't an ideal world. This doesn't usually happen.
What are some of the common sort of issues that stop you following what is essentially quite a logical process? What gets in the way?
So a lot of it is money.
Hello, I like money.
So they don't want to pay people to spend time on things that they don't understand the value of. But also I think we've actually had people that when you give them the prototype, they're like, okay, so when are we releasing it? You're like, no, this isn't the final thing. Like we have to program this now.
Yes.
And then they're like, no, but it's done. I can see it. I can even, because Adobe XD has this thing where you can send it to someone's like phone, and then they can play around with it. If it's like a mobile app now, it's perfect. It looks like a real app. So people often get confused and they're like, but it's already done. Why can't we just release it?
Yeah. So Adobe XD, that's a free tool now, I believe.
It's free on Windows 10. Unfortunately, you can't get it for like anything lower than that in Windows. I don't know about the Linux users. They probably can't get it. I don't know. They can get anything, I guess.
Yes. All right, cool. So that would be a nice starting place for someone to mess around if they were interested in the UX design part. Obviously, it's not going to get into the development, but just sort of designing it, that could be a good starting point.
A good exercise to do if you want to see if it's something that you'd enjoy, right? Just come up with something really easy, or take something existing like a Uber Eats app or whatever, and you just recreate like 1 or 2 pages or 3 things in XD, and then you take it to people. Create a prototype, and then take it to like some family members. Do like 2 or 3 people and ask them to just do something. Be like, oh, hey, why don't you just order a meal quickly? And they'll do something. And just by watching them, you're going to see that they're like, where do I click now? You see, oh, wow, that's a problem. And then go back, ask them questions about it. Like, why you paused here? Why? Were you uncertain where to click? They're like, I was kind of expecting it to be here, but it's not there. And then change it up and see how much easier it gets for people to use.
Okay, cool, awesome. So we've got a bit of an idea of the process there, but what does an average day look like for you? I mean, you check what time you arrive through CarTrack, and then how do you start your day? What are the sort of usual tasks you do towards the end?
So coffee is important because code doesn't get written without coffee.
Right.
An average day for me wouldn't necessarily look the same. Like it's very different because I'm either doing a UI UX part or I'm implementing, and those are very different days.
If I could take a wild guess, would it almost be like on one day you are perhaps sitting with a client and you're having a chat about one project, but then perhaps even on that same day, you are maybe then beginning to code up some of the features for a project that you already have in your pipeline or your backlog?
Yeah, so that very often happens, as well as sometimes you're working on 2 to 3 projects at the same time. That's a bit hectic. Let's say there's three average days that you can have. One is the one that you just explained, where you're busy maybe the UI UX phase of one thing and then the implementation of another. The second one could be you're literally going to meetings with the client, gathering requirements, full-time designing, all of that. And then the third one would be you have so much to develop that you are literally, that's how we're working with. So then you'd have a UI UX designer who'd be designing, and you'd just be developing, because there's just so much work that has to get out there.
What do you love the most about your job? What is the most exciting part of it?
So I think it's definitely, there's 2 things for me. One is it's never the same. So there's always something random or something new happening. So it helps to keep me focused, because I'm a person that loses interest really quickly.
Squirrel.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, having fun. Okay, not fun. No, I don't want to do this anymore. And then something new will come along. So it helps to keep me interested. And then the second thing is just being able to see something from like the inception of it to where it's done on a website, on a mobile app. that is so satisfying to see.
Right, so you're not just some sort of small cog in this giant machine. You're really sort of there from the beginning to the end. Okay, that is cool.
Yes.
That is cool. What do you like the least about your job? Or is there anything that you downright hate?
Yes, definitely. I don't think there's something that I like really hate. Okay, wait, maybe there is. I think it's when sometimes clients can be really difficult. And then they are like, no, but we need to put, then they give you like a paragraph of text to use as a heading. And you're like, but it won't fit. What must I do? And then you somehow have to make this fit on an iPhone 5, which is like tinier than, it's like an iPhone for ants.
What is this? A center for ants?
So it's literally the worst, and they will not budge. And you're like, okay, can we just remove like one word? They're like, no, but it has to be the full product name and things like that. So sometimes clients get really difficult with things like that. And then you're like, but how? And that's something that I hate. And then another thing that I don't like or dislike, I guess, would be that once you gain a lot of experience as a developer, then companies can make more out of billing the clients for you as a developer instead of a designer. You end up like mostly just developing instead of designing. So like you don't have that full divide anymore. You're more a front-end developer now than you are a UI UX developer, which sucks because I love both.
Right, understood. Okay, so what sort of person, what personality type would you recommend for this role? Who do you think would really love doing this?
So it's a bit of a, I think we can say it's a bit of a unicorn type person because it's someone, not that grows horns out of their heads, which would be weird, but also cool.
So horny people need not apply.
Horny people, basically. So done. No, I'm just kidding. It would be a person that can think in a logical way. So you have the like logic down to kind of write code and be able to think in that way. Because I mean, even if you're implementing an animation, which is fun, but it's math, disgusting actually, because you're like, oh, and then you get used to it and it's fine.
Right. So you need to have the imagination to see the mathematics and then understand what that's actually going to look like. Yes.
So you have to be both creative and have the capacity to think in a very logical way.
And an abstract way as well.
So you need both sides of the spectrum, which is very rare because usually people are much stronger in one than in the other. So basically people with broken brains.
Right. But I suppose at the same time, if you were someone who found yourself really design inclined, but not, developing, you could perhaps pick up just the UX side of it and then maybe don't go into development and vice versa.
I think it's easier. It's very hard to go from, if you can think logically, but you're not creative, that's very difficult to kind of bridge that gap. Right. But if you're a creative person that can kind of sort of think logically, you can always learn to think more in that sense. So it's easier to go from the one side to the other, I think, is another thing.
Right. Okay. All right. That's good advice. So could you think of anybody who would downright dislike this sort of work? So even if it's not just like a skills shortage, just like, someone who just wouldn't find it satisfying.
People who are not detail oriented, like people who are like, that's fine. Like, it's like, that thing's a bit skew and the text kind of overflows and it's okay. People like that because they would constantly be told, you'd have to fix this. This has to be perfect. This has to, so it's very, and it gets tedious to have to be that detail oriented, or like, I don't really know what you call it, but have such an attention to detail that it gets tedious if you don't like it. Right.
Okay, no, that's really specific. That's very good. And then the last question I want to ask is, how did you specifically get into this? And then it's kind of tied to that. Are there any sort of qualifications that you need, or can you get by with the skills alone?
So I actually studied acting first, because I was like, I'm gonna be an actress, and it didn't really happen.
I know the feeling.
I was like, okay,
And scene.
And scene. That was it. Thank you, guys. So yeah, like I really wanted to do that, but it didn't really work out. So I like still do random acting things here and there for the fun of it, but as a career, it didn't really take off. So I just did the logical thing and went into IT from there. I mean, that's what everyone does, you know.
Right.
No, I had IT in high school and I enjoyed it a lot. So I thought, I was like, oh, I want to kind of find something that can combine both in a way. So I actually found comes to the studying part, is a degree that's really good for this job specifically is game development.
Yeah.
So you learn how to draw, you learn how to draw digitally, you learn how to make animations, you learn how to program. So you have all of these computer science modules that are really like intense, and you just I kept failing them. It was horrible, but I just stuck through it. In the end, like a lot of people dropped out because it's so like, it's two opposites. You have all of this like hectic computer science, and then you have all of the extreme like design and typography and fun things. I think it's the fun things that kept me going.
That's a great way to build up the skills. Do you need the qualifications though, or can you sort of learn these skills on YouTube if you like as well?
I mean, technically you can learn these skills on YouTube. Not every company is just going to be like, oh yeah, you can be a developer, because there's a development aspect. Usually, like if you apply for front-end development jobs, like any development jobs, they want a minimum like a BSc IT or equivalent in experience type deal. So I think that getting into the development part of it might be a little bit difficult. But then again, they do, if you get in as a graduate, if you like studied through Udemy courses and whatever, and you're like, hey, some companies smaller companies probably might be like, hey, let's give this guy a test. Let's see and try. But essentially, I think without any degree, you're going to struggle to get in as a developer.
Right. So you might get lucky if somebody decides to take a chance on you, if you've maybe built up a bit of a portfolio, but the safe bet is to get some sort of com sci degree, essentially.
Yes. So you can opt for a funner one, like multimedia, because then you get to build games. And then also, I think that's the most important skill, is to never stop learning. Like through every day at work, I learn something new, something I'm like, oh, and then I have to go read documentation. And then I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And so I keep getting smarter.
And I suppose especially in the technology industry as well, the problem is that the things you're working with are consistently changing as well. So you're never going to catch up, so to speak.
The fields like of UI and UX are kind of, it's a young field, and it's still evolving very quickly. So it's keeping up with all of that, and then as well as keeping up with all of the development. But that I don't know if you have to go out and study after work. I don't think that's necessary. I think in your job, you'll come across new things you have to do daily, and then you'll learn that way.
I think you've given me a really thorough dive into this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. And thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun doing the interview, and I hope that some people out there who are lost feel found. Hope this helped.
That's a very passionate outro. Thank you very much. All right, cool. And cool. Cheers to you. So that was UI UX development. Perhaps you have the combination of creativity and coding skills that you need for this particular job. Is there a career that you would like to learn about? Or perhaps you have a unique career that you would like to share? Let us know down in the comments down below. And if you want to stay up to date with what careers are out there, don't forget to like and subscribe.